Now, pretty much everyone is familiar with what comics are, or at least they like to think that they are. The term comics has yet to be clearly defined, and such a definition can be either very broad or very narrow. The unfortunate fact is that in American society, the common definition in the minds of most people is extremely narrow. Additionally, the form itself is equated with a small handful of its instances that do not nearly make up an adequate representative sample. Let me try to explain what qualifies comics as an art form. Many people don't even give them that much credit. And what distinguishes them from other art forms. In his book, Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud presents a workable definition, one which is broad enough to include most notions of what comics are, as well as encompassing some forms of art and expression that aren't commonly regarded as comics. Without delving too deep into the nuances of this definition and how it was arrived at, it is stated as juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence, intended to convey information and/or to produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. It is extrapolated from Will Eisner's much simpler definition, namely, sequential art. Both definitions cover a vast number of artistic conveyances, from the four-color newspaper funnies we're all familiar with, to cave drawings and woodcuts. Basically, any series of images placed together with the intent of getting a point across can be considered comics. It need not have words. A sequence of silent images can convey a message just as well, maybe perhaps better than, one with words. With the language barrier effectively eliminated, anybody from any country or culture can conceivably understand a silent comic, with the possible exception of those accustomed to reading from right to left, encountering a left to right comic, or vice versa. Comics essentially combine aspects of literature and the visual arts, but the form does not fall wholly into either of those categories. It has a language and structure all its own. As also discussed in McCloud's book, a comics audience, the reader, takes a rather active role in reading a comic. This is done through the process of closure, or observing parts but perceiving the whole. Since each individual panel in a piece of comic art is a static image, the reader must employ imagination between the panels in order to understand the intended effect of a sequence of events. The creator of comics must also strive to lead the reader to perceive sound and motion where there is none. This is certainly more pronounced in reading, say, prose or poetry, where there are no images to help the reader along. In these cases, the audience has to come up with the mental image entirely on their own. At the other extreme is the motion picture form. While watching a movie or television show, all the information the audience needs is provided to them. Images, motion, time passage, sound, the exception to this being silent film, emotion. Hardly any imagination is required. The viewer is simply along for the ride. This is in no way a criticism of television or the movies, just an observation. Comics, then, fall neatly between these two media.